Welcome to Recovery Unplugged. My name is Allie Lang. The topic of loneliness and isolation seems very appropriate for the year 2020. In March, when almost everything shut down, it became increasingly difficult, almost impossible, to keep connection with people. The fear of contracting the virus, on top of the lack of places to go, kept most of us hidden in our homes, alone. Of course, this was an unprecedented event, and there was no way for us to prepare for this kind of isolation. Social distancing was not a term that we were familiar with, and most of us did not have much experience with Zoom, Google Duo, or DoxyMe. For some, this was a welcome break from an overbooked schedule and an overworked lifestyle. For others who tend to be a little bit more introverted, the initial shutdown wasn't so scary. Still, others were terrified by the new executive orders that continued to take away from them avenues for companionship. But no matter which category you fall into, over this extended period of quarantine, at some point, loneliness set in. The need for people, the need to see those that we love face to face, the need for a shoulder to cry on, and the need to vent, the need to be encouraged and loved. See, companionship is a need. Safe and healthy people are a need, and we refer to this need as the need for acceptance and belonging. Some of us learned how to meet this need in different ways. We began to explore such options as Zoom, Google Duo, and DoxyMe, and we gathered outside 6 feet apart when possible. When we did what was necessary to meet this need in a safe way. But some of us have remained stuck. We feel trapped in our loneliness and in our isolation. Isolation from a virus has become isolation from people and relationships, and this is an incredibly difficult place to be. Hockley and Cacioppo, 2 researchers from the University of Chicago, said that loneliness is a chronic state for 15 to 30% of the general population, and this was pre-COVID. Loneliness affects us in many different ways, including cognitively, emotionally, behaviorally, and even medically. Hockley and Cacioppo go on to list some of these negative effects as cognitive decline and dementia, depressive symptoms, a diminished capacity for self-regulation, and a higher risk for cardiovascular disease. These are just some of the many consequences for chronic loneliness. Rosie Leroux, who is a blog writer, gives a different perspective by looking at loneliness through the lens of observational and reflective means. She points out that those who suffer from chronic loneliness develop a simple fear of people. They see friendliness as an intrusion because of the guilt that it provokes. They tend to experience the world in increasingly negative terms, and they become obsessed with meeting their own needs. However, the most profound concept that Rosie brings to light is loneliness as a form of hunger. She says this: loneliness is not just hunger. It is the psychological equivalent of malnutrition, the lack of something that we need to survive. Malnutrition makes your body detach from your mind. You are starved. Every fiber of your being, every cell is craving, but it is not a hunger that can be filled with a big meal. It is not even hunger. Your body no longer wants feeding. It cannot digest. It rejects what it needs most. Some of you listening might strongly relate to that thought. Maybe you too have lived in a state of loneliness for so long that you don't even know how to go about meeting that need. Perhaps you too have rejected every opportunity to meet people, even though you know and are aware of that need for acceptance and belonging. This is a scary place to be, but my friend, it is not a hopeless place. One final consequence to loneliness that I want to look at before we move on is addiction. Shahram Heshmet, an associate professor at the University of Illinois, makes the connection between insecurely attached people and substance abuse. Those who struggle to make healthy attachments with other people typically succumb to loneliness and isolation. However, the inability to find acceptance and belonging leaves them feeling rejected. Hashmet states that the unavailability of support from others causes the insecurely attached individual to use other tactics to mitigate and control negative affect. Of course, these tactics can include drugs, alcohol, sex, and even pornography, all of which are very poor substitutes to relationships with healthy people. As we continue to look at loneliness and isolation, it's important to make a distinction between isolation and solitude. Solitude, as defined by Thomas Oppong, is a constructive state of engagement with oneself. There's purpose in solitude. But loneliness is feeling disconnected, alienated, or even misunderstood by people. Lonely people are seeking to be accepted and to belong. Lonely people long for relationship. They just struggle with the how. At this point, I want to bring our attention to the Bible and how it addresses our need for acceptance and belonging. To do this, we need to go back to the very beginning. In Genesis 1:26, it says, "Then God said, 'Let us make mankind in our likeness.'" This is a reference to the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. 3 persons, but one God. Now, this might sound like a really challenging concept, and the truth is, it is. But all you need to know for right now is that God considers relationship so important, even within the Godhead. So he creates man in his own image, and he names him Adam. Up until this point in the creation story, God has looked at everything and said that it is good. But when he gets to Adam, he doesn't say this. Instead, in Genesis 2:18, we read, "The Lord God said, 'It is not good for man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him.'" And then God creates Eve. At the very beginning of creation, God decided that relationships would be necessary for mankind. This means that the need for acceptance and belonging is wired into our very being by the Creator of the universe. It means that we're not meant to do life on our own. It means the lies that we say, "I'm strong enough to handle this on my own," or "I don't need people in my life," are just that. They're lies. We aren't strong enough to handle life on our own, and we do need people in our life. One very popular lie within the Christian community is, "I don't need people, I just need God." However, we can see from this text that God himself has decided that we would need God and people. It's not that God isn't enough, because he is, but that God decided that there is an aspect of himself that would only be seen through intimate relationships with healthy people. And oh, how beautiful a truth this really is. This all means that there are 2 parts to curing loneliness. First is a relationship with God, and second is a relationship with others. These go hand in hand, and both must be addressed in the life of the lonely person. Let's start with a relationship with God, as this relationship is foundational to our relationship with others. Ashleen Seitz, who writes from both a biblical and personal perspective, says this: "Our relationship with God is the one thing that can bring us out of our loneliness, because it's the connection that we were made to have. That one interaction with Jesus, who is God, brought meaning, comfort, and joy to the life of that leper, while all the jewels, gold, and women in the world didn't bring meaning to Solomon's life. Having a personal relationship with God changes everything, and it's the answer to our loneliness problem." Moving from loneliness and isolation to acceptance and belonging begins with a relationship with God. It is from him that we find our foundation so that we can be vulnerable and honest with other people. He is the ultimate provider of our acceptance and belonging. He created us to be in relationship with him first and foremost, and then with others. How amazing it is to think that the creator of the universe created you to be in relationship with him. He desires this and longs for you. He does not force us to be in relationship with him, but instead woos us to himself. How much does he love us? Enough to be willing to send his very son to the cross to die for you and I. That is the steepest price that anyone has ever paid for relationship. But even more profound than that is that he paid that price while you and I still wanted nothing to do with him. That is a love that can cure even the most severe case of loneliness. He's inviting you today to be in relationship with himself. May you not wait one more moment before you accept his invitation. Once you have come to know the truest and most fulfilling of relationships with God, he invites you to experience connection with others. We need God and we need community. Ecclesiastes 4:9 through 12 says, "Two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves, and a cord of 3 strands is not easily broken." These verses are often quoted among the Christian community, but I wonder if we really understand the value in them. Community is not just necessary so that we have people to hang out with, but so that we have real and meaningful relationships that will stand the test of difficulties, tragedies, and worldwide pandemics. We need relationships that are devoted. We need relationships with people whose acceptance of us is not dependent on whether or not we have a good day, but instead on their commitment to us. Oftentimes, we don't start out feeling lonely. First, we feel abandoned by the people that we thought were our friends. Those who walked away from us when things got tough. Those who could not help us up when we fell. Then, we feel lonely. I'll be the first to admit that relationships like these are hard to come by. Oftentimes, it's incredibly difficult to find a companion to do life with. But friend, it is not impossible, and it is necessary for us to pursue with everything inside of us relationships like these. One of my favorite things about the Bible is how relatable it is. You need not look any farther than the Word of God in order to find examples of those who have struggled with loneliness. When I examine the many characters in the Bible, I find none more honest than David. David undoubtedly felt every negative emotion that you and I have ever felt. And he also was no stranger to loneliness. In Psalm 25, verses 16 through 17, David says, "Turn to me and be gracious to me, for I am lonely and afflicted. Relieve the troubles of my heart and set me free from my anguish." David was well acquainted with loneliness at more than one time in his life. Sometimes he experienced loneliness as a result of his sin, but other times he experienced loneliness as a result of the sins of others. Either way, he had to learn how to navigate such difficult waters. Barbara Hitching, who serves as a spiritual mentor, life coach, and speaker, highlights 3 things that David did when he encountered loneliness. The first thing is that he learned how to talk to his soul. Psalm 42:5 says, "Why, my soul, are you downcast? Why so disturbed within me?" Sometimes we just need to admit and own what we're feeling. The feeling of loneliness in and of itself is not sin. It's normal. It's okay and even quite healthy to admit that you might be feeling lonely. David took stock of his soul and acknowledged the part of him that felt alone. And you can do this too. Second, in God's presence, after grieving, he remembered God's goodness. After grieving, this part is crucial. He grieved his loneliness and unwanted isolation. For some of you, this isolation has been forced upon you, and it's not of your own choosing. Have you grieved the loss of community in 2020? Community is not gone completely, but it has changed drastically. God cares about that. He understands that, and he welcomes that kind of honesty. In Psalm 42:11, we see David speaking again to his soul. "Why, my soul, are you downcast? Why so disturbed within me? Put your hope in God, for I will yet praise him, my Savior and my God." David is choosing to praise God even in his loneliness and despair. He changes his focus. And that brings me to the third point. David made a choice to turn from loneliness and discouragement to praise. In these verses, we see David telling his soul to put its hope in God. This is less of a change of feelings and more of a change of the will. David decides that he will put his hope in God to meet him in his loneliness and in his isolation. He trusts that God will not abandon him, and he reminds himself of the countless times before where God saved him. He knows that God will do it again. Friend, if you are in a season of loneliness and isolation, you too can make a decision of the will to put your hope in God. The feeling of loneliness might not disappear, but you will find hope in the promise of an end to this season and strength until you get there. When community is not an immediate option, Bring your loneliness and your isolation to God. One of my favorite passages of scripture referencing community is found in Acts 2, verses 42 through 47. It says, "And they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. And awe came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all, as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved." There are several important elements to this kind of community. First is that these believers were devoted. They were loyal to each other and to meeting together. Fellowship with one another was a priority because they knew their need for one another. Second, they cared about and provided for those in need. Biblical community and relationships prioritize others' needs above their own. They do not run when things get tough. They are committed to helping the one who has fallen back up. Finally, they praised God together. Biblical community puts the author of relationships first in their own relationships. Those who know the love of God can share that love with others. We need people in our life who know and love God. These will be the ones who help us move from loneliness and isolation towards acceptance and belonging. So what about you? How strong of a presence has loneliness had in your life? In 2020, maybe even before 2020? Where do you need to pursue change in this area of your life? Do you need to pursue a more intimate walk with God? Or do you need to seek out like-minded believers? Change is always uncomfortable, but it's always worth it. You do not have to continue in your lonely lifestyle. Isolation for the sake of your physical health does not need to come at the cost of your emotional health. Be creative, be bold, pursue God, and pursue people, because this is what you were created for.